welcome to the channel, Yankee's Outdoor Adventures. I am Maèxelawèn Osapèkwinùnt. We have our guest with us today again. Green Feathers has a YouTube channel, so be sure to check him out if you get a chance. November, Native American Heritage Month. November's coming to an end, and I wanted to make sure we definitely got another video in. Actually, Green Feathers, I want to thank you because actually had a really overwhelming response from your last show. So I wanted to have you back to share some more of your artifacts and some more of your knowledge. And speaking of knowledge, it is Native American Heritage Month. And how do you celebrate Native American Heritage Month is by learning something new about a Native American. Just learning something you didn't know before. It's that easy. And today, hopefully, we'll be able to help with that. Hello, Gemma, and welcome to the show. We are going to be sharing artifacts and just talking about several different things. I don't know how long of the show it's actually going to be. We're just going to kind of go with it. It'll probably be closer to an hour today. I do want to discuss many aspects of the Lenape, and one of the things I wanted to point out, and I actually had saved. Let me do this right here. I actually set up some backgrounds, and one of the things I wanted to point out is the fact. And did you see my background change there, brother? Yep. Okay. Awesome. I just wanted to point out something that you may not know about Native Americans was that Native Americans had a written language. I'll move some of this. I got stuff in the way here of the green screen. I see. There we go. So the whole table is in the way of the green screen. So let's do that like that. Boom. Sorry about that, guys. I did want to mention, that there was a written language. You may not know that there was a written language, but there definitely was. Oral tradition was really important. However, it wasn't the only type of communication or the only type of way of recording story and whatnot. And as you can see up here, there were several different types. Trying to pull it up on my, there we go, so that I can see it as you guys see it. But just going across from the top here real quick, they were more like an Egyptian writing that you would be used to seeing. On the far end up top was just a symbol to indicate clear weather, rain, snow, no rain, and then to the end would be stormy weather. It's actually, once you begin to look at the writing, it's personally to me, it's just really obvious of what it means. One of the things I did want to point out, though, was this one right here, which I just think is so cool. And why I think it's cool is to just give you a little bit more of an insight about me for a second is I do love my Native American heritage, but when I research history, one of the things I am most fascinated with is the differences in cultures that are so far apart. And although it's not a pyramid, okay, this particular symbol is an eye inside of a diamond, which indicated the Great Spirit. And I just really think that is so awesome, the connection of an eye inside that triangle or diamond shape, as you see right there, and for it having the same indication from cultures that scientifically would have never have interacted. So just was one of the things I wanted to point out. Again, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff during this show, guys. I know one of the things that I also did want to. Oh, that's not it. It's this one right here. It was just a reminder, and some of this stuff we've gone over before. But if you're new to the show and you're curious about the Lenape people, the area outlined in green was the I'm going to call it the known But as time goes on and more things are discovered in the New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York area, as well as in the Delaware area down on the bottom, we find out that the region was probably much larger than we originally realized. And this is more of what we originally realized. So that is the land of the Lenape people. Of course, history then moved them off to the Indian, the Northwest Territory, be the proper name for it. Northwest Territory included a big region of what we know today as Ohio. That is where a large percentage of the Lenape took up. During the time that they were run out. They were run out by the people that made this little thing over here, which you knew as the 13 colonies. Right. Green Feathers, how you doing today, my brother? I know
Excellent
one of the we do have some artifacts from you that we're going to get you to share with us. And actually, let me come back around like that. So I couldn't even see you. I was messing around with the backgrounds, and I hope you were able to see all the backgrounds I was using. All right.
Yep, everything came through very clearly. And again, thank you for having me on again.
Man, thank you.
Going back to what you started with about ancient hieroglyphic type of written language. So, as recently as the American Civil War, so much paper documentation was lost across a vast amount of the states that existed at that time, because as everyone that was born in my generation and prior knows, we write on paper, which is flammable. So going back to when our ancestors from pre-colonial times lived here, they had access to wood, they had access to bark, and many other materials upon which, for sure, they produced written language that's obviously
stone. I mean, let's not forget about stone, because that was,
stone. Correct. Yeah. Well, many artifacts have been found which have shapes and kind of hieroglyphic type of shapes upon them. Some of them were unfortunately forged. That's one aspect of archaeology that both learned and unlearned people that go into that field.
Yeah, so forgeries sometimes
discovers that forgeries exist for different reasons. People are trying to implement their own agenda into the historical record, which has always been the case, and it's a very unfortunate aspect of dealing with and recording the past. So, as you said, for sure, there's a lot of lost written hieroglyphic type of written record. Just a parallel to that, as a semi-fluent speaker of Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, and a recorder of that culture, that's one aspect of my ancestry as well. We had a similar language in ancient Stone Age Ireland called Ogham, which is spelled O-G-H-A-M. It's spelled like Ogham. And essentially, it consisted of lines, dashes, curves, which depicted natural phenomenon that would have been common to the global society at the time during ancient times, as displayed behind Yankee right now. We have a lot of signs and symbols that are reflective of the lifestyle they lived, representing a hut, representing 1, 2, or 3 people at a time, or perhaps something in the sky which they observed and recorded as a phenomenon, like the four-cornered eye. To me, that is reminiscent of the solar cross, which was a global phenomenon as well. It essentially was an astronomical symbol of the Milky Way galaxy, which consists of 2 spirals interlocking. It's a 4-armed symbol. So to the natives, the number 4 was very sacred. In fact, their corn rituals continentally, that being the 4 seasons reflective of their corn harvesting cycle, consisted of a ritual honoring of that symbol, the number 4, even going to cultures extending across the Atlantic had a similar connotation in ancient agricultural society.
The Lenape, they also honored 12. There was a couple numbers that were sacred in that aspect. Hey, Gemma and Happy Trails Wood Pigeon, welcome to the stream, guys. I know with the Lenape, it was there's 12 tiers. It'd be the best way to say it, I guess. 12 tiers to heaven,
Okay.
or to the Creator. So in that, like in a naming ritual, is a perfect example. And you know what? Let me go ahead and bring this up a minute too. Because this was on a request of an audience member, and I'm not going to get deep into this, but I'm just going to kind of give you a quick culture background on the tradition of naming. Okay, and it kind of leads into what I was just saying. So now, in our culture, traditionally, one was not named at birth. That's common in today's belief and Christianity belief that a baby would have been born and named right away. For the Lenape, that wasn't necessarily true. We were gifted a name at an appropriate age based off of the elements specific to that person. This could include, but it's not limited to, significant happenings to or by the person, or certain circumstances that help define the person. So traditionally, when a youngster kind of was coming of age, when they were actually beginning to show who they were in life, this is a time when their name would have actually been given to them. You probably would have been called just something, nothing more than a term of endearment, like you may use today of "Hey, honey," or whatnot. The name would have been given to you at that point. Now that there was a large ceremony that would take place for the name, and once the name has been defined, you may hear it referred to as many different things. Okay, so like the real name, the spirit name, the native name, your given name, your gifted name, and these are all appropriate if a person says that this is their their real name, gifted name, so on. Some people even have more than one gifted name. Some people can go their entire lives without being named until nearly the end of their time here on Earth. So again, your name to the Lenape culture wasn't so much of a thing to call an individual as it was to state who the individual was. And that was probably the most important part. Now, in a lot of cases, and like traditionally, you wouldn't have the parents would not have chosen the name, just because for the same reason you probably shouldn't pick what you think your kid is going to be, because you're going to be biased to that opinion, So an outsider, a family member, a trusted associate of some sort would be the one who would gift the name. Of course, they would be someone who was able to gift the name as well, but that's a whole nother basis. But someday would. Okay. Another Okay, on the days of the ceremony, there would be a ceremony to give the names, guys. I lost myself in my notes. I'm really sorry about that. On the day of the ceremonies, the families and friends of the tribal community would gather together in a sacred circle. They would pray and allow the gifted members to announce out loud their name. This would be the first time that they would announce their name out loud. and they would announce their name out loud to the elders of the group, who would have all been involved in selecting the name. I think that's where I skipped on my notes, and I'm very sorry about that. The person who's chosen to select your name, this isn't a really quick process for them. They're going to actually study the person that they're naming. They're going, in most cases, would already know them a little bit. Then they would not only decide upon a name, but then check the records of names, because it was really important to the Lenape that you did not name people the same. So a name was kind of retired with you, if at all possible. So there is actually a record of names yet today that still access today, because naming still goes on yet today. So that person would have to have the duty of checking the bank of names. Of course, that's much easier, I imagine, in today's day and age than it would have been back then. For somebody back then, I'd imagine it would have took quite a bit longer to make sure the name wasn't being used, probably in nearby villages or whatnot. Then they, of course, would meditate and pray about the name, and it would be another following day before they actually, gave it to you. Their job would not only in today's culture, their job would be to not only give you the name, but to make sure you could say it properly when you give thanks for the name. Okay, so and I think when names were given, I think it's important to know that this is still done yet today. It's also important to know that you don't have to be necessarily born Native American to have a Native American name, to have a Lenape name gifted to you. You definitely have a lot of different things that would qualify you for a Native name. So if it's something that interests you, don't be afraid to research it a little more. You can contact me, and I can direct you to people that could help you get an official and proper Native name. Generally, in tradition, gifts would be given. The family of the child who was named would generally, in a traditional sense, throw a banquet, I guess, so to speak. They would have a feast for everyone. It would be their gift. If they also wanted to gift something else to the council, to the individual who helped pick the name, these were things that were permitted and things that were done also. All right, guys. I know I got up on the stand it on the names, but naming was again a part of who you are. And I can say, because the question was asked to me about how it feels, and I can only answer for myself because of how it feels, but how it feels to be a recipient of a Native name. Because as you guys know, my name is Maèxelawèn Osapèkwinùnt, which of course has a meaning. It means, in a short, it means, it's a long name. So in a short, it means I am the one who can bring people together from far apart, from across the ocean and across the land. I'm the one who can bring you together. That's what my name means. Now, what does it mean to me? And that was the question I was asked. And in culture, which is very important to me, the gifting of your name comes along with the opinion of the one who gifted and the elders who agreed and approved. Okay. That means this is honestly the perception of you in the eyes of your people. So to me, what it meant to me was I was given a title that they seen as something I did, which of course it is, But I seen it as they gave me a title for me to remember who I am, and how it makes me feel is that I feel responsible for that name. Um, so anytime I do things, like when I help the community and I introduce people to other people from different cultures, but I know you guys will get along and stuff like that. That's just me being me. That's what that is. So that was the purpose of getting onto the names. Hello, Inspired John and Harmony Loves. I may lose everybody, Dwayne and Wood Pigeon, because I keep rambling. I don't address the chat, but brother, why don't I know a lot of people really do come to see some artifacts? So why don't you show us a couple things while and tell us what you're looking at? You know what though? Let's show some. Let me pull this up. Let's show something right now related to this guy. Related to this guy, right?
Very nice.
Like that. I just made that real quick after we talked. But yeah, let's pull up. Let's go ahead and get something related to this guy. And who is this guy? This guy is. Wait, I got another one. I even said his name up top. Look at there. But this guy is Masingu, and this is even a little more appropriate considering some of what you have to share with us. So, actually, without further ado, let me. I'm gonna enlarge if I can get my big fingers to work. I am going to enlarge you like so, and allow you. Hello, Green Feather, and allow you to go ahead and show us an artifact. Tell us a little something about it.
Well, just leading off, kind of where you left off, going back a little bit, you had a linguistic map of North, Central, and South New Jersey and Eastern Pennsylvania, what was traditionally called the Lenape Hoken, or living space of our people. This is exclusively where I've done the artifact hunting that I conduct. I live in Central New Jersey, and my ancestors are from the Central New Jersey band exclusively, from what I'm aware of anyway. Up until recently, going back to the contact period as well, they would be called the Unami people. That was the language, and their symbol was the turtle. What we know about them is that they have been here for a very long time. People have been here in general in Central New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, and Southern New York State since the Ice Age. So much of what I find dates back to then, and a lot of what they would have prepared during that time would have been pertaining to the lifestyle that they would have needed. Hunting beasts that you and I have absolutely no connection to today, because we can go to a supermarket and buy a piece of steak, but our ancestors had to go and kill things that were the size of school buses. So it's really, really perplexing to people in modern times to think about the way in which people in the past would have had to have lived. But if you go out and just look around you, the answers are right there. So starting
I
with
do
that,
I see our chat room. Kentucky, welcome. Dwayne, great to have you here. And Dwayne mentioned he was told that he had Blackfoot in the family. Blackfoot, and it's very possible. Blackfoot was in part of this region that I'm in right now as well. When we talk about all that recorded history of Native Americans, it's already after they were driven by the settlers. So there's a lot we don't really know that could have taken place in that region earlier, that there's no written record for. We slowly do find certain things.
And in my opinion, it will take a few centuries worth of individuals investing their entire lives in searching and really with today we have the advantage of lidar scanning, it's called, and in places like Central America, like Guatemala, where the Mayans live, they've done a lot of 3D underground scanning using drones and amazing technology that exists today that 10 years ago did not. For amateur archaeologists, even like myself, there's opportunities in the future for sure that will be present to uncover everything that lies underneath the ground all around us, even in places like New Jersey, where people are very quickly dismissive of the ancient history here. Today, someone might say, New Jersey, like, what do you mean that, like, really developed state that looks like garbage? But if you go there and you look around, you'll be like, well,
It's what's
that's not
under.
quite, that's not the whole history. It's not,
Yeah,
that's not even what much of our state looks like. It's just kind of the projected stereotype of the tri-state is city and
but one of the biggest
things like
problems,
that. But if you,
when it comes to the archaeology, is when you're studying a people that were, uh, I guess, in better no better comparison, they were go green people way more than any go green person ever, because everything they made was of the natural elements and used. So you lose so much of it to time. It naturally decays away. A village left abandoned long enough would just become the forest floor. So
that's right. And I've uncovered sites even less than 2 miles down the road from where I'm sitting right now that speak credence to that. Going back tens of thousands of years, I found a lot of mounds along the creek right down the road from my apartments, and I'm about to show you some of what I found there. And all of it consists of natural materials, of course, but you can see the weathering, or people who have studied art history will call that a patina when it pertains to pottery or visual art. But when you're looking at artifacts made of stone and clay, it's just wear over time from sitting in a
right.
creek, from sitting in the earth under pressure, and just weather and everything that will
I'm not sure
wear
how
down
well
the material.
if you guys can see this one here. This is actually in New York area. It's a really well known artifact. But it's carved into a large rock. It's carved into a large rock, and this part of it is like gone, but there's a spring that runs across it. So you do got to use your imagination of what it looked like in its entirety before so many
Yeah.
years changed the spring and washed the
Yep.
face.
That's one aspect of megalithic structures here in New Jersey too. Only recently up at Lake Apacong did they discover that there was a essentially pre-Ice Age era land bridge that connected the main shore of the surrounding lake territory, leading all the way out to a miniature island right in the middle of Lake Apacong. And they confirmed that it dated back to Lenape and archaic time periods when people piled stones. And in the same way, the ancient Mayans and Mesoamericans constructed Mexico City and Tenochtitlan and structures along the entirety of North, Central, and South America that required a lot of individual manpower and access to materials that were specific to that region, which permitted the construction of such really huge public projects. And what I found from going out to that miniature island in Lake Apacong, I found actually a really interesting Clovis point, which is kind of the oldest point that I found to date, and the surrounding park speaks credence to that as well. There was access to a lot of really fine local materials that were able to get very sharp during archaic and Paleolithic times, like flint and a material called gneiss. And this really, really small kind of ovular shaped point right here is from that island. And it's from what we call the Clovis culture. So it's actually only recently did they discover that the technology that permitted the thin fluting of this projectile point was present here for about 300 to 500 years exclusively, whereas before they weren't sure where did the Clovis culture come from. Did it come over the land bridge on the Bering Strait, or was it imported perhaps transcontinentally, and then, or who,
Right.
you know, we don't know it necessarily where every single wave of culture that's
Right. Well,
established
let's
itself
get
over
let's
long
back up
periods of
to
time
the
here has
Chingu
come
again
from.
a minute. Because I do know, do you actually, do you got some pictures or do you actually have the items?
In regards to the face, the
Yeah.
slanted face motif and the Masenku motif,
Yeah.
uh, essentially, that's something that I feel over time was probably built upon based on an ancient motif, like you speak about in your creation story pertaining to Grassman, Bigfoot myth, which could correlate to Neanderthals or Denisovans or something along those lines. So there are artifacts I have, and I'm about to show you one. This one here, and I'm sorry for the camera quality. I do have kind of higher quality photos with which Yankee could screen share, but there's a slanted face motif that exists in this region of New Jersey, New York State, and Pennsylvania. And essentially, what it consists of is two eyes and a slanted mouth. And what it's depicting is a creation story of man and of really Yankee goes into a high amount of detail in one of his videos pertaining to Grassman. That's what we have come to the conclusion that this motif pertains to really a character within the spiritual context of our people that lived here as a forest guardian, protective type of spirit. Like for those of you who may be familiar with the modern film director Hayao Miyazaki, there's a film called Princess Mononoke, which I'm sure some people watching this might have seen. And there's these little elf type of sprite entities called Kodama, which exists in Japanese mythology. And then if you look at Ireland, there's this kind of global persisting legend of a like this slanted face type of forest guardian that is this protective spirit of sorts. And it seems that there was a credence and a homage, a dedication to that entity here in the Eastern Woodlands. This here is a little pendant. And again, I'm so sorry for the camera quality on my phone.
Well, that one's awesome.
This one is very, very detailed. And
Yeah,
again, sorry for the quality, but if Yankee can provide maybe a screen share later on or
yeah, the phone
something
don't
with
let me.
the
Yeah,
images
the
that I
phone
emailed
won't.
him,
It won't let me screen share it. So
either
uh,
way, we'll find a way to get it to the audience. But there's
yeah,
a lot of motifs here that exist
I think they
pertaining
could see
to,
it. I do. I think they could
yeah,
see it. Uh,
the
you know,
human face.
you mentioned
Sculptors would
the
call
little
them
the dwarfs. You mentioned like dwarfs or elves
right.
or
That's what, yeah,
fairies or
right.
whatnot. The Lenape had them in the forest as well. Aside from missing, they also had the Manitou, which were uh,
The
mischief
spirits.
little spirits, but they were best described as little people.
Yeah,
That they may mess with a hunter, or then again they may be generous to a hunter. But they were a spirit of the woods that they would leave gifts for quite regularly if they were hunting in their area. And the gifts would be usually tobacco as a gift, and as well, um, maybe a portion of your kill would have been left as well. But,
and that cultural trend of take and give to what is perceived to be a little people of the forests is also replicable in places even up until this modern day, if you believe it or not, like Scandinavia. A lot of modern Norwegian countries have this folk culture to the elves, they'll call them, and it's kind of just this phenomenon that exists pan culturally, globally, where who knows what really happened in ancient times, to be honest.
Elves or fairies, whatever you want to refer to them as, and giants are two things that kind of pop up all the way around the world. But actually, I don't want to turn the show into that conversation, but we will save that for a future one because I can dive into giants and we'll stay in there for a long time. So
for sure, that's a whole other can of worms.
That is. You got another artifact of the Maèxelawèn?
I do. So I think I showed you the two that I referenced earlier, which essentially were what we call portable rock art. It's essentially like a little highly polished, and they carved this slanted face on the front. There's an eye right here, an eye right here, and then this very wide open mouth.
The face would have been carved on. I mean, it would have been probably one of the most common faces. Well, for a face, it would have been the most common face carved. But of course, there were a lot of other symbols that were carved. It was probably one of the most common symbols you would have seen in a Lenape village, though. So it's part of the reason why there are so many.
Another really interesting one having to do with the face motif actually goes back to a really, really unusual and I would say borderline spiritual experience, which essentially in my childhood backyard, when I first got into saving pieces of the past and artifacts of our people, I was doing a little bit of searching back there, and I saw an embankment in an area in the woods, which was the remnants of a dried out creek. So I figured, for sure there could be maybe a fragment of pottery along this creek, which I could find. And at the time, I had never found a fragment of pottery. It was just one part of searching for artifacts that really intrigued me because it was such an intimate connection to the past. Like someone handcrafted that piece of pottery to suit a certain purpose, whatever it was. And I had a particular motif in my mind when I was going out into the woods that day. And I actually later on got it tattooed to me. And it consists of a series of horizontal lines and then like a thicker vertical line. And I've seen that pattern extend as far north into like Iroquoian culture, and I never knew necessarily what it meant visually. Maybe it pertains to something having to do with the hieroglyphic language, which you mentioned earlier.
I would imagine it would, and that language is, all the way down the coast. There was different symbols used for different things. The Iroquois used symbols to talk to each other, like a stealth way of communication for your military was to make carvings of battle notes of what you're about
in the trees.
Yeah, yep. So as you're like coming through the woods, right, you may come to a tree with a message on it.
And who knows what that particular symbol meant in the ultimate ancient context, but I had that particular theme in mind that day I went out. Now, normally it takes a few minutes or hours to find something especially of like exquisite quality. So I went out literally within 10 seconds. The very first strike of my garden tool into the soil along this creek embankment, this is what I pulled out right from it. And again, I apologize if the camera quality is kind of poor.
Let me bring you back up again here. Hang on a second. There we go.
So you can see this little face in the middle. It's kind of hard to see, but it's like there's a downward triangular pointed nose, and then there's like a horizontal slit where the mouth would be. But then on the outside, you have this the horizontal lines with the thicker vertical line motif that I had in my mind the day that I found this. And at first, when I found this, I immediately knew it was a native artifact, and I started freaking out because I'm like, first off, to find a completely intact piece of pottery in New Jersey of native origin is extremely rare. But
Right.
upon emailing this to a professor of mine, he said, no, that's not pottery made of clay. I got to email this to the state archaeologist and find out, like, let's dig a little deeper on this one. And it turns out that this is made of copper. This is a sacred artifact to our ancestors because copper was highly
Well, and
regarded,
it's again another thing that people
as
that's probably another
a
thing people didn't realize about the Native Americans, that there was use of copper.
So the face motif extended going back to unknown time periods in which there was metalworking going on here, and we don't know what it was depicting. Was it the creation story of man, going back to Yankee's oral history retained from our ancestors of, early man talking to the creator about man's impact on the environment, and the later ramifications of that on our nature? Was the face motif a reflection of just the artist depicting their own face in certain context? That's something that extending all across the world, people would paint and carve themselves as an artist just to practice all the time.
It is funny though
different things, different circumstances. Like
we look today. We look at things like we got to fix the environment, and we point out all the things we're doing wrong and what we need to fix. It's interesting to me that so long ago, the natives were so were just as worried about the environment. They totally then seen the impact man made on nature, and it is really amazing that how far we have come with it, and we still are talking about, yeah, maybe we should stop and take care of nature a little bit. But I don't know. I guess once it's all one big city, we'll finally realize we should have taken care of something.
Once it looks like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah. More like the Jetsons.
In that regards,
we'll all live on stilts because the ground level will be a giant landfill.
In that regards, I do feel that that theme of environmental stewardship versus environmental vulturism, I guess you could call it. I don't even know if I'm coining that term right now or not, but just the idea of seeing nature as an object of prey from which you can just endlessly extract and reap the benefits of. Guess what? The natives who lived here knew that in Paleolithic times, their forefathers lived a hunter-gatherer society, and then there were waves of agricultural societies that had effects on the overall health of the society. If you look at the way in which the human species has actually physically evolved from when we were exclusively hunter-gatherers to when we started developing agricultural traits, we developed jaws because we needed to chew grains versus the pronounced teeth that required, exclusive meat consumption. So it's just this endless process over time of
we acquired speech because we needed to learn how to lie.
That's right.
Hey, I just takes us on a bad side note though, but it's actually one of the most beneficial survival traits of man is the knowledge of how to communicate and to lie. So unfortunately, we're born liars. I hate to say that, but it's true.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Mechanism. It's a self-preservation mechanism.
That's true, so and to a certain extent, I do feel like behavioral norms were. It's that whole nature versus nature nature versus nurture argument it goes back to in that sense. But on the larger whole of how people that lived in one point in time versus another, there there was so much of time in which people didn't have to lie, and there was such an abundance because people understood that they didn't have to endlessly press into harvesting materials for the sake of
And at some point,
needless kind of
at some point,
production and
self-preservation changed. Yeah, at a
right.
point, self-preservation changed, where we realized that everything we were doing was to survive to see tomorrow, and then at some point we realized that, well, we're gonna survive till tomorrow when I got all these skills. What can I use them for to make myself a better tomorrow, if that's what you want to call it? And
And during the contact period, it was the first infusion of people from like a almost overwhelmed type of society like we live in today, coming to a society that was more rooted in an ancient holistic way of life, and the normative or the normal really tradition of European explorers during the time was to come here, take a native wife, and guess what? A native wife could build you a shelter, would know how to hunt, and do a whole bunch of things that your European wife
would fight
back in
alongside
England
you in
or
the war.
Germany didn't know how
She,
to do, and maybe was causing you a great amount of grief over
yeah,
for one reason or another because it was such a variety of culture that
yeah, there was a
the
reason.
difference was
They
night
like
and
to
day.
call them. They like to call them guides in the time era, but there's a reason why the settlers always picked a female as their guide, that they made their essentially their wives, and it was because they needed the knowledge that the natives had. I mean, that's it. That's it in a
Right. They
nutshell.
knew the trails, they knew the everything, the norms of that place and time. So if you go somewhere and you don't know anything about the place, you're going to want to
Yeah,
seek out someone who knows something about the place. And if you're there by yourself and you're like a single 20, something year old person during a time when they're like, "Hey, go here and explore." Guess what? You're going to be like, "Hey, let's just maybe get married." And then people back then would have traded, would have
well,
shown you their cultural norms, and then that was the norm of America that became established, and then it was continuous waves of people intermixing into, and even to this day, that's what our culture and
culture.
our country is consisted of, many waves of people coming in and succeeding, into the admixture that's been here for tens of thousands of years. And um, it's up to the people that are aware of some of the history that's been here before to just simply, share that to those that are of interest that come here and pass on what we do know of this land and our people and everything along those lines. So,
Well, Green
having
Feathers,
said
brother,
that,
you got some arrowheads you wanted to show, but
that's right. I was about to
the
say,
more
having said that,
modern,
I'd like
not
to show you
modern, but
some of what
not as old
that.
as the paleo stuff.
No, not necessarily. A lot of what I'll show you right now is just basically what we were going off of, like contact period, and
Yeah,
maybe a couple hundred years before that, when
right.
people were just working with
Well,
basically
I mean,
the
possibly 10,000 years before is still in that era
for
of
sure,
using the same tools and the same,
for sure,
the lifestyle that was encountered during incursion. Well, I shouldn't call it. That's not really a polite way to say it. Say during um, uh, the first settlements, the first settlements encountered that
right,
lifestyle
like the early
going on
contact
here
period.
like 10,000 years, and it already, it's been going on for that long already.
So one thing that when they came here was, how did people process materials that were already here, because they had the know-how from the old world, quote unquote, of Europe and ultimately the Middle East, clay processing, stone processing. How did people do it here? In the what we call the woodland period, which is really the modern period of Eastern territories, when they were making things out of clay, they would take bits of stone and they would crush them and they would make them kind of a thickening agent in the clay itself, similar to how we make concrete today. And they would utilize everything around them, other stones, sticks, bark, logs, to help shape the ultimate vessel that they were looking to craft. One of the largest artifacts in terms of clay vessels that I found, and fragments of them, comes from a creek not far from me called Reminiscent. And
Right.
this is it right here. And it's kind of hard to see with the camera quality, and I apologize, but the way in which this was crafted, and you can kind of see like these really rough streaks that run horizontally
Right.
alongside the whole curved backside of this piece. That's indicative of like kind of if you peeled the bark off of a log and you were drying a piece of flat clay upon it, it left that imprint upon the back part of this piece. And on the top, you see a lot of, and it's kind of hard to see with this camera quality. This is my phone, but there's a lot of really, really small cross hatching here that like
Right.
the camera's not really doing much justice here. But when I was talking to the state archaeologist about this particular big piece of pottery that I uncovered, we actually found out that the Lenape used to make very big satchels out of like a nettle fiber. And it seems that they would cut swaths of it to make imprints upon the pottery during a particular time period, which again, I said was, within the last 1,000 years for sure. So it seems based on the level of sediment, rock sediment, and the way in which it was constructed, that this is a more modern pottery piece versus in the last video I showed a piece of Adena mountain pottery, which goes back very far. So let me show some projectile points and hunting arrowheads and spears from the modern time period versus the ancient time period.
I got you on display there.
Sure.
Nice.
So I have them kind of categorized by shape. And I'll start from the bottom here. Some of these here are actually made of copper. These three are made of copper. And copper was available to the natives here both before and after the contact period, but especially after, because a lot of Europeans would come here with, different metal materials and would trade. These are all stone points at the top, and you can see different types of ways in which they would be shaped at the bottom, which correlate to each other to add a aerodynamic quality, and we call that the tail of the point. The points themselves consist of basically, the tip, the edges, which would be shaped in different ways across different time periods, and then also the tails, which again, depending on the cultural incursion and what they were trying to kill, would have a different purpose. If it was for warfare, if it was for hunting a particular type of game.
Yep, that is correct.
This one here is quite a like I would say this is a fairly average sized like woodland period spearhead, and you can see a little bit of the red ochre still caked on the front, which is differentiated from like the grayish type of color elsewhere.
Right on. Nice. Now these come all from the same area, or
so all of these are from Monmouth and Mercer County in New Jersey, and they go back again. Either this one is a little bit more archaic. It is a little bit more remnant of like the Clovis type of point, because it's just the material used in the shape. You can just tell what it would have been used for. And also like the patina, you can see like there's this weird darkening, and that tells that it's been sitting in the sediment for a very long time. So depending on where you live and the type of river and creek in which you find some of these materials, and you can see this point is actually made of bone. I'm not sure if you can tell or not, but It has the same exact shape as like this one here.
That was polished well, the bone.
Very highly polished, and it's not unusual to find like one. Sometimes they call them like turkey tails. Sometimes it's just like essentially the bottom point of the spearhead or arrowhead. And you'll like know the famous like fleur-de-lis symbol in France. Almost looks exactly like this, and that's what it's depicting, is like a spearhead with a type of fluted symbol. And it essentially it would give it an aerodynamic and a balanced quality when it was thrown. So one side being kind of curved and then the other side being flighted is mostly what I find in terms of what they would have used to kill deer. You can see that one side is flighted here. This is called soapstone, and this type of material was also heavily used for pipes. Smoking pipes, tobacco pipes.
Right there. Very sacred item itself.
So you see again, curved, and then the other side is very, very tailed. So this theme and this technology, rather, really, is what it is. Existed over a lot of centuries.
Yeah, a pipe is a sacred item, and no matter what the pipe is, or who makes the pipe, or who owns the pipe, if it is a pipe, it is a sacred item. There's something they may not have known.
So this type of point is called like a leaf blade point, and this is a very iconic Adena era, or like late archaic, early woodland. Kind of like later mound builders that were replicating the early mound builders would have used this type of point. And I found this in a creek about a half a mile down the road. And these are some other points of the same type of different materials that are almost the same exact size and ratio that I've categorized for everybody to enjoy.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
And you can see how they would even like punch a hole sometimes with a drill, either made of copper or stone. Oops. To create a highly like curved feature in like the flight of the blade. Again, you see like the flight, one curve side, flight, one curve. Same thing going on here, but this one's a little bit larger.
Right on. Awesome, man.
And then,
bunch of cool stuff. If you're in a region like Green Feathers is in, you can explore and find things like this yourself without a doubt. Let's come back up here. We're gonna, at Green Feathers, we're in almost an hour. Let's go ahead and wrap it at an hour, if that's all right with you. And we will. If anybody comes in and replay and has any questions for myself or for Green Feathers, I do want to encourage you to put it in the comment section down below. I'll answer, and of course, Green Feathers get a chance. He'll even answer. Last picture I did have saved, and we'll kind of leave on this note, was another thing that everyone may have not have known about the Lenape people was they were master carpenters. Much of their artifacts didn't last because they were made of wood, but from hunting camp style wigwams to handcrafted canoes. And I don't think if you had never seen a wooden hand dug canoe, you're really missing something. The artwork that took place to create such a thing. And as this picture here, you can see back here behind me, is fire burning on top, and that's actually how they would create these. Remember the tools they had were good enough to take maybe chunks of wood out, but it would have been a really long process. You would have broke a lot of tools. So the best way to work wood was to burn it and chip away as it burnt the charred areas. And this is what they would do is burn.
That's
They would
right.
actually use fire to fall the tree in the first place. Uh, and
Right.
and once you had a tree fallen, you would use again the fire to remove the branches, uh, fire to section out the piece that you wanted, along with chipping, and then you would begin fire burning on top of the log. Which is it's all amazing that they were able to figure
It
out.
is amazing. It is amazing, and it's from many, many generations of trial and error, followed by
And then
know-how,
many
followed
generations
by
of success.
right. Yep.
So, Green Feathers, again, thank you very much. Do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
I just want to give a very, very, very quick shout out to just a few books that I'd like the audience to for Native Heritage Month if they're interested in Lenape culture. Maybe look into for future reference if you would like to order them on Amazon or have access to a library that provides them.
Definitely,
So,
definitely.
sure.
And again,
Here's a few
guys,
right
you
here.
celebrate just by learning something new. That's how you celebrate. So,
Yep, this one right here, Lenape Country, I just read recently. Great read. It's about pretty much the contact period, like we were talking about for the majority of this episode. This one right here, The Indians of New Jersey. It is by Gregory Evans Dowd. This one, great read. A little bit about pre-contact and also contact period. This is exclusively about pre-contact period, New Jersey Native Americans, and it's like very visual. There's a lot of pictures of artifacts and lifestyle and different things like that. If anybody's interested, Dorothy Cross, very simple read. This is a very, very, very highly informative book written by an Unami Lenape, a woman named Touching Leaves Woman, who actually was full-blooded Lenape and was, very, very informative enough to pass on her knowledge of cooking and traditional lifestyle to the next generation. So check out. This book is available. Actually, I got it on Amazon, and it's only about 50 pages or so. And it's
nice.
got pictures, and it's got traditional linguistic terms and everything for tools and ingredients. This one right here, it's called The People of New Jersey, and the author's name is right there. That's a great read. And then one more I'd like to say before we go is called The People of the River Valleys. That's the title of the book, and I would say that actually would be my highest recommended read for people interested in pre-incursion to contact period Lenape culture. People of the River Valleys. It's a very informative read.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Green Feathers. Thank you to everybody who came to the show. Thank you to everybody who's here watching in a replay. And again, get out, celebrate Native American Heritage Month. Green Feathers will definitely have you back in the future. And we're going to call it a wrap. Thanks again, everybody. And we are out. And